The hegemony arclight was not built. It grew. It was a distinction Adrian Hale had spent 3 long months trying and failing to explain in his reports back home. Terra understood steel and polymer, the defiant thrust of a skyscraper against gravity. Terra did not understand a city cultivated from a living, quasi-sentient, crystalline substrate. Here, they called it the lattice, from his temporary quarters in the crown spire. Adrian had a view that was worth 1,000,000,000,000 credits and gave him a headache every morning. The skyline of Arclight was not a collection of buildings. It was a forest of translucent spires that pulsed with a soft, internal luminescence, catching the light of the binary suns and refracting it into spectra that human eyes were never meant to process. Bioarchitectural bridges flowed between the towers like spun sugar, their structures humming with the slow, resonant traffic of the city. Below, the trees did not just grow. They sang. Their broad, leaf-like structures vibrated with photosynthetic energy, releasing a faint, chordal harmony that permeated the air. It was, Adrian admitted, agonizingly beautiful, and he could not wait to leave. He fastened the final clasp on his diplomatic courier bag. It was done. The trade treaty was signed. The cultural exchange program, a polite term for letting each side scan the other's databases for hidden threats, was concluded. After 94 days of smiling until his face ached, of navigating protocols that felt more like religious rites, and of drinking bioluminescent tea that tasted like static, Adrian Hale was going home. He was, by every measure, an ordinary specialist. Grade 4, proficient in xenolinguistics, specialized in emergent biotech societies. He was polite, unremarkable, and exceptionally good at fading into the background. It was this perceived harmlessness that made him Terra's best negotiator. No one in the hegemony knew his secret. No one knew that the constant, low-level hum of the lattice was, to him, not just a sound. It was a pressure, a presence, a voice he felt in his bones. Sometimes, when he was alone, he could feel the thrum of the city's health, the slow tidal pull of its energy grids, the collective sigh of its population. He was a resonant, a genetic fluke, a human tuning fork in a city made of crystal song. And here, that kind of sensitivity was not just unknown. It was a liability he kept buried deeper than bedrock. He checked his reflection in the smooth, pearlescent wall. The formal human diplomatic suit looked dull, almost dead, against the living vibrancy of the room. His mission was complete. And more importantly, his other mission, the personal one, had been a catastrophic failure. For 3 months, he had been in the same city, often the same colossal building, as High Regent Calder Thane, and he had not found a single piece of leverage, a single crack in the man's armor. The thought of the High Regent tightened Adrian's jaw. Calder Thane, the power behind the throne, the architect of Arclight's modern xenophobic policies, the man with eyes like frozen chips of glass. He was the reason Adrian had volunteered for this posting. He was the man Adrian had sworn, 5 years ago over the smoking ruins of the Oakhaven outpost, that he would one day ruin. The memory of that day, the scent of ozone and scorched earth, the sight of human blood staining the alien soil, was a cold, hard stone in his gut. Caldor had been there. Not officially, of course. His signature was in no order. But his shadow had fallen long and dark over the entire misunderstanding, an incident that had cost 17 human lives, including some Adrian knew. And now, Adrian was leaving with nothing but a worthless trade agreement. The anger tasted like ash. A soft chime, like brushed glass, announced his escort. He opened the door. Captain Ariasol stood there, a study in disciplined severity. Her armor was not metal, but a dark, chitinous material that seemed articulated to her own musculature. It was sleek, organic, and utterly intimidating. Her face was impassive, her dark hair pulled back in a severe knot. "Specialist Hale," she said. Her voice was a flat contralto, devoid of any ceremonial warmth. "The Empress awaits. The farewell audience is scheduled for precisely 17 o'clock. "Thank you, Captain," Adrian said, taking his bag. "I wouldn't want to be late. It's so hard to rebook passage on the biocircuit gateways." Arya Sol did not smile. He was not sure he had ever seen her smile. "The gateways are extensions of the Lattice Specialist. They do not rebook. They respond to allocated permissions." "Right. Like I said, bureaucracy." Adrian offered her a bland smile. "Lead the way." They walked in silence. The corridors of the crown spire were vast, vaulted chambers of living, glowing crystal. The air was warm and humid, smelling faintly of ozone and flowering moss. It was like walking through the nave of a cathedral built inside a giant, living organism. Adrian focused on the click of his own hard-soled shoes against the softly resilient floor, a rhythm of artifice against a world of growth. His mind sifted through the other players. Archivist Nyx, the keeper of the biological codices, a diminutive, ancient woman, who seemed to have roots extending into the spire's very foundations. She spoke in riddles and seemed to regard him as a curious, if slightly contaminated, specimen. And there was the Empress Seraphine Kale. She was the heart of the Lattice, or perhaps its prisoner, the sovereign of the hegemony, bound to the bio-network in a quasi-telepathic symbiosis that gave her immense insight and, Adrian suspected, profound isolation. He had seen her only at formal functions, a woman of impossible, fragile beauty, her features serene and distant. Her connection to the Lattice was the bedrock of their government, the divine right of her bloodline. But Adrian often wondered who was truly in charge, the Empress, or the High Regent who interpreted her will. The throne room, if it could be called, that was a vast, open-air amphitheater near the spire's apex. The throne was a living chair of woven light strands, fused directly into the floor, which was a pulsing map of the entire city's energy flow. Seraphine was there, flanked by Keldor Thane. The High Regent stood a step behind her, and to the right, a position of perfect subservience that fooled no one. He was a tall man, starkly handsome, his silver-shot hair giving him a look of premature wisdom. His robes were a deep, austere indigo, a sharp contrast to the Empress's pale, glowing silks. Archivist Nyx stood to the left, small and still as a shadow. Captain Arya Sol moved to the perimeter, her eyes sweeping the assembled courtiers, a handful of arc-light nobility, their bodies subtly augmented with elegant, crystalline growths. Keldor Thane's voice filled the space, smooth and resonant. Specialist Adrian Hale of Terra, her imperial radiance, Empress Seraphine Kale, acknowledges the completion of your duties. The hegemony accepts the Treaty of Mutual Commercial Understanding. Adrian bowed, the precise, 30-degree inclination he had practiced. Terra is grateful, High Regent. We hope this is the first step of a long and fruitful friendship. He kept his eyes on the floor. He did not trust himself to look at Kaldor without his hatred showing. "Indeed," Kaldor said, the word clipped. Her radiance will now extend the formal farewell. This was the final piece of ritual. Adrian stepped forward, stopping exactly 4 paces from the throne. He raised his eyes. The Empress was looking at him. Really looking at him, for the first time in 3 months. Her eyes were a startling violet, and they were not serene. They were wide, alert, and filled with an emotion he could not place. He opened his mouth to recite the formal human valediction. He never got the chance. It began as a hum, a vibration he felt not in his ears, but in his teeth, his sternum. It was the lattice. But it was not the city's ambient, harmonic song. This was a single, rising, piercing note. Empress Seraphine Kale gasped. A small, sharp sound. And then she began to glow. It was not a metaphor. Her skin, her robes, the very air around her became suffused with a brilliant, silver-white light. It was no reflection. It was an eruption. The light strands of the throne blazed in response. Across the floor, the energy map of the city pulsed in a frantic, cascading tidal wave of light, all flowing toward her. The courtiers shouted, shielding their eyes. Captain Arya Sol drew her sidearm, a wicked-looking biospiker, her body tensing as she scanned for a threat. Caldor Thane's face was a mask of shock, his composure shattered for the first time. Your radiance. What is this? Seraphine ignored him. She was staring only at Adrian. The light was so bright it bleached all color from the room, leaving only black shadow and blinding white. Adrian stood frozen, his secret screaming within him. The resonance was overwhelming. It was a shout, a symphony, a demand, all pouring from her and into the lattice. And the lattice was echoing it back, amplifying it. She rose from the throne, a figure of pure, blinding energy. She took one step toward him. The sound of the room vanished, replaced by the overwhelming roar of the lattice in his head. She leaned in close, her face inches from his. The light she emitted was warm, not hot. He could see the faint, human freckles on her nose beneath the stellar glare. Her voice was a whisper, but it cut through the internal cacophony like a blade. You're not done yet. And then, as quickly as it began, the light vanished. It did not fade. It was extinguished, as if a switch had been thrown. Seraphine swayed, her body suddenly frail. The glow was gone. She was just a woman in pale silks again, her face ashen, her violet eyes wide with a terrifying, raw emotion. Caldor Thane caught her as she stumbled, his arm wrapping around her waist. His shock had been replaced by a furious, cold calculation. His eyes locked onto Adrian. It was not a question. It was an accusation. Captain Sol, Caldor's voice cracked like a whip. Escort specialist Hale to his quarters. He is unwell. The altitude. No doubt. I feel fine, High Regent, Adrian said, his voice surprisingly steady, though his heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. You are mistaken, Caldor said, his voice dropping to a silken threat. You are unwell, and you will be confined to your quarters until we can ascertain the source of this technological disruption. That was not technology, Archivist Nyx said, her voice dry as old paper. She, alone, had not flinched. She was staring at Adrian with a new, intense curiosity. That resonated. Caldor ignored her. Arya. Now. Captain Sol hesitated for a fraction of a second, her gaze flickering between the Empress, Caldor, and Adrian. Then, her discipline reasserted itself. This way. Specialist. Adrian last saw Seraphine. She was leaning heavily on Caldor's arm, but her eyes were on him, and the look she gave him was unmistakable. It was not a plea. It was not a command. It was a warning, and it was a desperate appeal. The walk back to his quarters was silent, but the atmosphere had changed. The hum of the spire felt different, agitated. The two guards who fell in step behind him were not a ceremonial escort. They were guards. Arya Sol left him at his door. You will remain here, she stated. Captain, this is a diplomatic incident, Adrian said, keeping his tone reasonable. I am a protected envoy. My mission is complete. Your mission, Arya replied, her face unreadable. Appears to have been extended. By order of the Regency Council. She turned and left. Guards took positions on either side of his door. Adrian stared at the closed door for a full 10 seconds. His pulse was still erratic. You're not done yet. He moved quickly to his personal console, sweeping his bag onto the floor. Bureaucratic error, he muttered to himself. A power play. Kaldor is spooked. He'll hold me for 12 hours. Make some demands. And I'll be on my way. He activated the console, navigating to the Interstellar Gateway interface. His departure clearance was scheduled for 1900. He found the file. And his blood ran cold. A single, stark line of text pulsed in the Arclight script. Clearance revoked. He stared at it, not pending, not delayed. Revoked? Okay, he told the empty room. Okay, this is not a misunderstanding. He switched interfaces, opening his priority diplomatic channel to the Terran embassy on Cygnus Alpha. The connection protocols initiated, the biocircuit port on his console glowing as it prepared to handshake with the Spire's central systems. The light flickered, turned amber, and then went dark. A new message overlaid his screen. Network access, temporarily suspended. He was cut off, no clearance, no communications, no way out. The full weight of his situation descended on him. This was not a 12-hour hold. This was an imprisonment. He stood in the silent, vibrant room. The song of the lattice now sounding like the walls of a cage. Anger came first, hot and sharp. Kaldor Thane. This had the man's fingerprints all over it. That snake had been waiting for an excuse, and the Empress's bizarre light show had given it to him. He was trapped in a world controlled by the one man he had sworn to destroy. The irony was so bitter, it almost made him laugh. The hunter was in the snare. The vow he had made over those 17 graves felt like a hollow mockery. But beneath the anger, a deeper, colder current was moving. He replayed the scene in his mind. The light, the tidal wave of resonance, the look on Kaldor's face pure, undiluted shock. Kaldor had not expected that. He replayed Seraphine's face. The light had come from her. She had been in control, if only for a moment. She had used that moment to look at him, to speak to him. And her eyes, afterward the warning, the appeal. She was not warning him about herself. She was warning him about Kaldor. She was appealing for help. The revocation of his clearance, the suspension of his comms, that was Kaldor's move. A panicked, brutal response to an event he did not understand. He was locking down the witness. He was isolating the variable. Adrian Hale, the ordinary specialist, was the variable. The Empress, the lonely sovereign bound to her throne, was in danger. A coup was not just possible. It felt imminent. And she, in that one blazing moment of power, had looked at the insignificant human negotiator and tagged him. You're not done yet. He was no prisoner of the Empress. He was her only ally. Adrian looked at his locked door, at the glowing, mocking beauty of the city beyond his window. Well, he whispered, the dry humor a thin shield against the fear. This certainly complicates the revenge. For 2 days, Adrian Hale was a guest of honor, that is, a prisoner. His quarters were magnificent, the air always a perfect 22 degrees, the food that arrived precisely at 8, 13, and 20 o'clock was an exquisite symphony of alien flavors. And he was unequivocally trapped. The 2 guards outside his door were statuesque, unblinking, and utterly polite. They did not answer his questions, his diplomatic protests, or his attempts at dry humor. He was not under arrest. He was being protected, pending a review of the anomalous energy signature. His console remained a beautiful, useless slab of pearlescent crystal. No gateway access, no interstellar comms. He was an island. "This is Kaldor's move," he said to the empty room, pacing the soft, moss-like carpet. "He's consolidating." He was terrified by what Seraphine did, and he's scrubbing the witness. But the logic felt thin. If Kaldor just wanted him gone, he would have put him on the first transport, not locked him in. He stopped pacing. He was an analyst. He was missing data. The console was locked, but the entire city was a network. The air hummed with it. The walls pulsed with it. He had been trained his whole life to ignore his resonance, to shield it, to pretend it was just a headache. Now, he did the opposite. He sat on the floor, closed his eyes, and listened. He let the spire hum fill his mind. It was not a sound. It was a texture, a vast, complex tapestry of light and information. He felt the slow, steady pulse of the city's life support, the rush of the transport systems, the whisper of millions of minds brushing against the lattice. And he felt the block. It was crude, layered over the natural harmony of the lattice. It was a patch of static, a sour note in the symphony. It was a digital construct, not a biological one. He focused on it, tracing the lines of the blockage. It was a quarantine field, isolating his quarters entirely. He followed the directive's signature, the unique energy pattern of its authorization. He had felt it before, in the negotiation room. The digital seal on the final treaty drafts. It did not belong to the Empress. It belonged to the Regency Council. It was Kaldor's hand, clear as day. He had used the Council's authority to blindside the Empress and cage the outsider. Adrian opened his eyes, the anger coiling low in his stomach. He was a pawn in a game he did not understand, and he hated it. But his revenge, the cold, simmering need to see Kaldor Thane pay for Oakhaven. That motive was now tangled in something far larger. Seraphine. She had chosen him. She had lit herself up like a star and pointed at him. She was warning him. He spent the next 12 hours in a state of controlled fury, examining every inch of his quarters. He found no obvious surveillance. The arclight did not need cameras. The very walls were sensors, if one knew how to access them. He assumed he was being watched, listened to, and analyzed. On the third day, a visitor arrived. The chimes sounded, and the door opened. It was not Captain Saul. It was Archivist Nyx. She was ancient, barely 5 feet tall, her skin the color and texture of dried parchment. She glided into the room, followed by a silent attendant pulling a small hover cart. The guards at the door did not move. Nyx, it seemed, was on the approved list. "Specialist Hale," she said, her voice a dry rustle. "The High Regent continues to express his profound concern for your acclamation." "My acclamation is complete," Adrian said, his voice flat. "My departure, however, seems to have hit a bureaucratic snag. Snags are merely threads, specialists. One must discover what they are attached to." Nyx's dark, impossibly old eyes studied him. "The High Regent finds that quiet contemplation often purifies the spirit. He suggests you meditate on the disruption you witnessed. I am not a monk, archivist. I am a diplomat. And I'm quite sure my spirit is as pure as it's going to get." A flicker of something amusement, perhaps passed over her features. "Perhaps. But the Empress felt your contemplation might be unfocused. She has sent you some reading material to aid your understanding of our ways." The attendant guided the hovercart forward. On it, sat a single complex data crystal, glowing with a soft, amber light. Adrian looked at it. "My console is non-functional." "This," Nick said, tapping the crystal with one long, gnarled finger, "is a Mitrata codex. It is self-illuminating. It requires no console. It requires only an attentive mind." She dismissed the attendant. The door slid shut, leaving them alone. The silence in the room suddenly felt heavy, charged. "The Empress," Nick said, her voice dropping, "enjoys history. She is particularly fond of the passages concerning the alignment." Adrian's posture sharpened. "The alignment." "The ascension alignment," Nix clarified. "A most delicate time. It is the ceremony, held every 10th cycle, where the bond between the sovereign and the lattice is reaffirmed. When the harmony is renewed," she paused. "Or, in times of instability, when it can be challenged." "And when is this ceremony?" "In 3 days." The ticking clock. There it was. "Archivist," Adrian said carefully. "What happened in the throne room, that light?" "You are a resonant," she stated. It was not a question. Adrian's blood went cold. His greatest secret, spoken aloud by an alien. "I am a Terran specialist, grade 4, he said, the denial automatic. "Do not be tedious. Specialist. It is unbecoming of a man in your position." Nix gestured to the codex. "We have had legends. Rumors of off-worlders who could hear the lattice, but never one who could elicit such a response. Not since the beginning. I did nothing. The Empress did that. She responded to you, Specialist Hale. The lattice is a symphony. The Empress is the conductor, but you are an instrument it has not heard in a millennium. You arrived here is now either a cosmic miracle or a catastrophic coincidence. Our history is built on such things." She leaned closer. "The High Regent believes you are a weapon, a biological contaminant sent by Terra to destabilize the throne. He is convinced your presence is an act of war." "He's wrong." "I know," Nix said simply. "And so does the Empress." "Why did she send this?" "Because you are a negotiator," Nix said. "And she wishes to negotiate. She cannot speak to you. Kaldor watches her every move. The Regency Council has encircled her, for her protection, but she can point. Read the Codex, Specialist. Read about the Sovereign Cord." She glided to the door. "Archivist," she turned. "Kaldor thinks I'm a weapon. What does the Empress think I am?" Nix's ancient face was unreadable. "A key. Specialist, or? And she is not the only one who knows how to turn it." The door slid shut. Adrian was left with the glowing crystal. He touched its surface. It was warm. The complex, alien script bloomed in the air above it, a 3-dimensional projection of text. He spent the next several hours absorbing the Mitrata Codex. It was dense, poetic, and terrifying. It spoke of the lattice not as a tool, but as a partner. It spoke of the imperial line as guardians, not rulers. And it spoke, in the most ancient, veiled passages, of the sovereign cord, the full power of the lattice. Its deepest creative and defensive protocols could not be unlocked by a single mind. The bond, as it existed now with Seraphine, was incomplete, a half-song. The monarchy was a regency, holding the throne until the Diad was restored. The sovereign cord, the true command of the Arclight world, required 2 distinct but complementary minds, resonating in perfect, willful harmony. "You're not done yet." It was not a command, it was a plea. She was a conductor who had just found her lost orchestra, and the Ascension alignment was the concert. The next day, Captain Arya Saul came for him. She stood at his door, her face as impassive as the armor she wore. The two guards snapped to attention. Specialist Hale, the High Regent has approved a period of regulated exercise. You will be escorted to the Luminous Gardens for 1 hour. How generous, Adrian said, grabbing his utility jacket. I was afraid my muscles might atrophy from all this contemplation. Arya's face did not twitch. This way. They walked the gleaming corridors. Adrian noted Arya's posture. She was tense, her hand never far from her sidearm. She was walking, 3 paces ahead of him, with 2 guards flanking him from behind. A prisoner, not a guest. Tell me, Captain. Adrian tried, his voice conversational. These anomalous energy signatures, have they found what caused it? A power surge, bad wiring. The lattice does not have wiring on Specialist, Arya said, not looking back. Right, my mistake. Bad routes. Then, you will be silent during the transit. So much for witty banter. Adrian fell silent, but his mind was racing. Nyx had given him what? He needed the how. How was Kaldor planning to redirect the alignment? The Codex said the bond was biological, sacred. It could not simply be given to another. It had to be broken, or usurped. They reached a major junction, a grand, vaulted intersection of the spire. To the right, a glowing archway led to the Luminous Gardens. To the left, a massive transport node pulsed with the traffic of the upper spire. And straight ahead, a smaller, darker, unadorned archway. A sign above it, in formal Arclight script, read, Restricted, Biomaintenance, Undervault, the Catacombs, the Root System. As they neared the junction, a piercing alarm shrieked from the transport node to their left. It was not a bell, it was a high-frequency sound, a chord of pure panic that made Adrian's teeth ache. Arya Sol spun, drawing her weapon in a single, fluid motion. Her body went rigid. Lattice pressure alert node beta is critical. The 2 guards behind Adrian instinctively raised their own spiker rifles, aiming toward the transport node. Arya barked at them. Hold this position, secure the Specialist. She looked at Adrian, her eyes hard. Stay here. Do not move. Then she was gone, sprinting toward the transport node, her armored boots silent on the crystalline floor. The 2 guards huddled near Adrian, their attention divided, their weapons pointed down the main corridor. The alarm was deafening. And Adrian was standing 10 feet from the open, unguarded archway to the undervault. He watched the guards' backs. He looked at the archway. He looked in the direction Arya had run. This was not a mistake. That alarm was too specific, too convenient. Arya's orders to her guards, hold this position, were a tactical error. A real commander would have dragged the prisoner with her, or sent 1 guard with her. She had intentionally created a blind spot. She had left the door open. Nyx had called him. Arya was letting him find the lock. He took 1, 2, 3 silent steps backward. The guards did not turn. The alarm covered any sound. He slipped into the darkness of the undervault. The change was instantaneous. The air became cool, damp. The scent of ozone and moss was replaced by the smell of deep earth and mildew. The walls were not polished crystal. They were rough-hewn, covered in thick, pulsing roots of the lattice, some as thick as a man's torso. This was the spire's plumbing, its foundations. He had maybe 10 minutes before Arya resolved the false alarm and returned. He moved quickly, deeper into the dark. His resonance, suppressed for so long, was his guide. He was not looking for anything. He was listening. He was searching for that sour note. Kaldor's digital scar. In the pure, raw signal of the undervault. It would stand out. He found it. 50 meters down a side conduit. He came upon a nexus. The ancient, organic roots of the original lattice were interwoven with a newer, sleeker, colder set of crystalline conduits, Caldor's modern control grid. But there was a third thing. It was massive. A tumorous-looking bulge in the lattice root system. A neural network of dark, oily-looking crystal that seemed to drink the light from the surrounding roots. It was the size of a small house, and it felt asleep, but dreaming. A dusty, ancient data plate was bolted to the rock beside it. Phantom, Choir decommissioned. Cycle, 44 Delta. This was old tech, ancient, forbidden tech, a biological artificial intelligence, and it was not decommissioned. Adrian could feel it, a slow, rhythmic pulse, like a slumbering heart. He ran his fingers over a junction box on its surface. It was cold, but a fresh layer of sealant, still tacky, had been applied. Modern tools had been here. Recently. This was Caldor's how. He was going to use this thing to hijack the alignment. The sovereign chord required 2 resonant minds. Seraphine had 1. Caldor did not. So he was waking up this abomination to fake the other half of the harmony. But why the codex was clear. It was harmony, not just power. A new, terrible thought surfaced. The choir was a bio-AI. It would need a template, a mind to teach it the new harmony. It would need a resonant. Caldor had not known Adrian was a resonant, not until the throne room. He was not trying to use me, Adrian realized, his stomach tightening. He was trying to activate this thing, and he was failing. That's why Seraphine has been safe until now. He was missing the key. Then I showed up. He thinks I'm the key here. He needed proof. He needed to know what the choir was singing. He looked at the junction box. He could not interface with it. His console was useless, and he did not have an ArcLight bioport. He reached into his jacket. His diplomatic credentials were in one pocket, in the other. His standard-issue Terran utility kit, a multi-tool, a microtorch, and a basic medical scanner with a finger-clamp pulse monitor. He smiled. It was a grim, angry smile. Time for a very human solution. He pried the cover off the junction box. Inside, a complex weave of fiber optic filaments pulsed with data. He did not know the language, the encryption. But he did not need to. He pulled the wire strippers from his multi-tool and spliced them into 2 of the largest filaments, attaching leads. He fed them into his multi-tool's diagnostic port. The screen flickered, displaying incomprehensible, scrolling code, biological encryption, signals designed to block other lattice frequencies. But Adrian was not a lattice frequency. He took the pulse monitor from the medkit. He clamped it onto his left wrist. The scanner lit, showing his pulse, 84 beats per minute. A steady, rhythmic, analog signal. He stripped the output wire from the pulse monitor and jammed it directly into the data stream, creating a crude, forced bridge. He was using his human heartbeat as a primitive synchronization key. The effect was immediate. The encrypted signal, designed to repel sophisticated crystalline frequencies, had no defense against the messy, electrical-chemical rhythm of a human heart. The code on his multi-tool stuttered, broke, and then resolved. He was in. He was not just feeling the choir's pulse. He was reading it. It was not a song. It was a whisper, a low, subsonic transmission being piped into the spire's ambient systems. It was a stream of code designed to induce low-level anxiety, fear of outsiders, suspicion of change. And there, at the bottom of the signal packet, was the authorization matrix. High Regent Caldor Thane, Lord Regent Varys, Lady Regent Myrrell, the 2 most vocal biopurists on the council, the ones who had accused Terra of diluting ArcLight culture, and beneath that, a routing protocol to an off-world beacon, a corporate identifier, Helios Crown. The name hit him like a physical blow. The same shell corporation that had supplied the illegal terraforming tech at Oakhaven. The same group whose name was in the one redacted file he had managed to recover from the massacre. Kaldor had not just been there 5 years ago. He was still working with them. The Oakhaven massacre was not an incident. It was a deal. A trade. Kaldor had given Helios Crown the outpost and the 17 lives in exchange for what their technology, their silence. The rage was so sudden and white-hot it almost blinded him. His revenge was not a separate path. It was the same path. He had to stop Kaldor, not just to save Seraphine, but to get justice for his people. His heart rate spiked, 110 beats per minute. The data on his multi-tool scrambled as his key changed. He forced himself to breathe, calm. He needed the data, footsteps, soft, fast. He ripped the wires free, pocketed his tools, and slammed the panel shut, wiping the tacky sealant smudge with his sleeve. He spun around, schooling his features into mild confusion. Captain Arya Sol stood at the conduit entrance, her weapon holstered. She was alone. "The alert was a pressure flux," she said, her voice flat, betraying no emotion. "A false positive." "Oh, good," Adrian said, stepping out of the alcove. "I got turned around. This place is a maze. Very rustic. You should really consider redecorating. Maybe some of that singing flora." Arya's eyes were chips of ice. She stared at him, her gaze flicking for 1 second to the junction box he had just left, then back to his face. She knew. She did not know what he had done, but she knew he had not been lost. "The tour is over," she said. She escorted him back, not to his quarters, but to the luminous gardens. The hour of exercise was, apparently, still mandatory. They walked in silence. The gardens were breathtaking. A zero-gravity cascade of phosphorescent plants and softly chiming crystal flowers. But Adrian saw none of it. His mind was reeling. Kaldor, Helios, the choir, the alignment in 3 days. Kaldor needed him as a key. But the assassination attempt at Oakhaven Kaldor was allied with murderers. What if Adrian was too dangerous, too unpredictable to be used? What if containment was no longer enough? Arya was walking 10 paces ahead of him. A deliberate distance, giving him space, or keeping him at range. He stopped, pretending to examine a spray of blue, glowing moss. He needed to think. The attack was completely silent, a hiss of displaced air. From the dense, phosphorescent foliage to his left, something small, dark, and impossibly fast shot toward his neck. He had 0 seconds to think, no time to process, only to react. He did not duck. He did not raise his hands. He dropped every mental shield he had ever built. He focused his lifetime of suppressed resonance, his fear, his cold rage, and shouted into the lattice with his mind. It was a single, violent, discordant clang of pure, focused negation. The air in front of his face shimmered, like a heat haze. The attacker a thorn wasp, a tiny, articulated construct of metal and chitin. A favored bioassassin's tool was guided by a micro-connection to the lattice. Adrian's mental shout was not a shield. It was a localized EMP blast of pure resonance. He had scrambled its signal. The thorn wasp froze in midair, its wings ceasing their hypersonic vibration. It hung suspended for a microsecond, its guidance system fried, and then clattered harmlessly to the crystalline path at his feet. It was over before a normal human could have blinked. Arya Sol was at his side, her weapon drawn, spinning to face the foliage she assumed the attack had come from. "What was that?" she demanded, scanning the gardens. "Report!" Adrian's heart was hammering so hard, it felt like a fist against his ribs. His secret, his deepest, most guarded secret, was out. He had just performed magic in front of the captain of the Imperial Guard. He bent down slowly, his hand steady, and picked up the inert construct. It looked like a dead dragonfly, exquisitely crafted. "I think," Adrian said, his voice remarkably calm, "one of your wasps is malfunctioning, Captain." Arya lowered her weapon, her eyes fixed on the dead drone in his hand. She stared at it. She stared at the foliage. She stared at him. Her face was pale. She was no fool. She knew what those were. She knew they did not just stop. "The High Regent's concern for your health," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "seems to have escalated." Adrian met her gaze, the dead assassin cold in his palm. "It seems so," he replied. "The funny thing is, Captain, I'm feeling more normal than I have all day." Arya Sol held his gaze for a long, heavy second. Then she gave a single, sharp nod. The dynamic had shifted, irrevocably. He was not a diplomatic package. He was not a victim. He was a player, and the game was now lethal. The return to his quarters was a blur of calculated silence. Arya Sol did not walk behind him. She walked beside him. The two guards, summoned by a silent command, fell 20 paces behind, demoted from jailers to trailing perimeter. The dead thorn wasp was a heavy weight in Adrian's pocket. "He knows," Adrian stated, the moment the door slid shut, sealing them inside. "He knew my designation. He knew I was a specialist, Rob, but he didn't know what I was. Until the throne room. He thought I was a threat, so he tried to have me killed at Oakhaven. But when Seraphine lit up, he realized I wasn't just a political problem. I had a lattice problem." "He realized," Arya said, her voice tight, "that you were the key he had been missing." She was pacing the room, her armor a dark, agitated shadow against the glowing walls. "He has been trying to awaken the choir for a cycle. It has not responded. He needed a true resonant to prime it. He was going to use you. But the Empress claimed you first." "So he switched tactics," Adrian reasoned, the pieces falling into place with sickening speed. "From exploitation to extermination. If he can't use me, he has to eliminate me before the alignment. And he has to discredit you," Arya finished. "He has to ensure that whatever you are, whatever she sees in you, is seen as a disease. Not a miracle, as if summoned by her words." The ambient hum of the spire changed. A new broadcast signal overrode the room's passive environmental controls. The pearlescent wall shimmered, resolving into a high-definition image of High Regent Caldor Thane. He was not in his austere robes. He was wearing the formal, somber attire of the Regency Council, standing before the great central pillar of the spire. His face was a mask of grave concern and resolute strength. He looked, Adrian thought, disgustingly sovereign. "My people." Caldor's voice was deep, resonant, and broadcast across the entire planet-wide lattice. "For 3 days, we have waited. We have prayed. We have held our collective breath, seeking clarity on the anomaly that disrupted the farewell of the Terran envoy." He paused, letting the tension build. Our beloved Empress, in her divine sensitivity, was the first to feel it, a shadow, a disharmony, an echo of corruption, brought to our world by those who do not understand the sanctity of the lattice. She recoiled, her very essence burning white-hot to purge the intrusion. "You brilliant monster," Adrian thought, his hands clenching. "He's spinning it. He's twisting her defense into an illness." We have confirmed, Caldor continued, that the Terran specialist, Adrian Hale, is a carrier of an unregulated, off-world biological signature. A resonance, yes, but one that is alien, one that is incompatible with the purity of our systems. It is an infection, a psychic contagion. The broadcast switched to a grainy image of Adrian in the throne room, frozen at the moment Seraphine had blazed with light. It was artfully framed. It did not look like she was reaching for him. It looked like she was recoiling from him. This alien contamination filtering is not a request. It is a vital defense, Caldor announced. To protect her, to allow the lattice to heal from this intrusion, the Empress has been placed under full ritual supervision. She will be shielded by the Council, kept in healing isolation, until the alignment, where we shall gather as one to purge this shadow. Arya let out a sharp, controlled breath. He's done it. He has invoked the ritual supervision. He has legally imprisoned her in plain sight. And I, Adrian said, watching his own face, now labeled Biothreat Level Amber, on the wall, am the boogeyman. He has severed the head from the body, Arya said, her voice like ice. She cannot command. She cannot countermand him. He now controls the council, the military, and the narrative. And the Phantom Choir is his weapon. So, Adrian said, turning from the broadcast, we have a problem. Your priority is the Empress. She is now locked in the deepest, most secure part of the spire, surrounded by his loyalists. My priority as well. It's a long list, but not being dissected is high on it. And Caldor is the man at the top of that list. Arya stopped pacing. She looked at him, her gaze sharp and analytical. This creates friction. My goal is to emphasize physical safety. Your presence, your nature is the source of the instability. The logical move would be to neutralize you, hand you to Caldor, bargain for her release. You could try, Adrian said, his voice quiet. He didn't move, but the air in the room seemed to crackle around him. The resonance was no longer something he hid. It was a cloak he wore. But you and I both know he wouldn't bargain. He'd take me, and he'd keep her. And then, he'd activate that choir. And this entire world would become his puppet theater. You would be trading a maybe for a definitely. Your Empress would be safe. And a slave. Arya held his gaze. The silence stretched. Your logic is inconvenient, she finally said. I am the inconvenient truth, Captain. I am the key he needs, and I am the cord she is missing. We are past the point of simple, clean objectives. She walked to a small, ornamental alcove in the wall, a decorative piece of crystal latticework. She pressed her gauntleted hand to it in a complex sequence. A panel slid open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a small, dark, non-luminous object. It looked like an obsidian cuff. The spire is alive, Arya said. The walls are sensors. They monitor the biological signatures of every living thing inside. They are tuned to his frequency and to the Council's. But not to this. She handed it to him. It was cold to the touch. It is a shadow key, she said. Old tech, pre-lattice. It does not mask you. It detunes you. When it is active, to the spire's passive sensors, you will not register as alive. You will be a void, a patch of silence. It will last for exactly 10 minutes before the lattice adapts and burns it out. 10 minutes. That is all I can give you. 10 minutes, Adrian said, fastening it to his wrist. Not much of a head start. It is not a head start, Arya snapped. It is a leash. Do not mistake me, specialist. I am not your partner. I am her shield. You are, for now, a necessary complication. Archivist Nix will be here shortly. She believes she can help you. I believe you are a vector for chaos. But the Empress trusts you, and I trust her. Do not make me regret that." She left without another word. The gate guards, he noted, had been doubled. Kaldor was tightening the noose. He had perhaps an hour before Nix arrived. He was not going to waste it. His console was dead. The undervault was inaccessible. But he had his resonance. And now, he had a theory. He looked at the utility kit he had used in the undervault. He looked at the room's high-end amenities. My heartbeat worked as a key. He thought. A crude, analog, human signal. The lattice is crystalline. It responds to sympathetic vibration. He went to work. He was a negotiator. But he had been trained in field-expedient technology. Terra taught its people to be versatile. He dismantled the room's sonic cleanser, pulling the haptic vibration motor from its control panel. It was a small, weighted disc designed to create precise vibrations. From the food replicator's access panel, he carefully extracted a micropower coil and a handful of insulated filaments. He sat on the floor, the components spread before him. He took the pulse monitor from his medkit. He wired the pulse monitor's output through the power coil, amplifying its tiny electrical signal. He then fed that signal into the haptic motor. He mounted the entire assembly onto the back of his tactical-grade datapad, strapping it to his left forearm with recycled casing strips. It was ugly. It was crude. It was a Frankenstein's monster of alien and human tech. He took a deep breath. He clamped the pulse monitor to his right index finger. He activated the device. A low thrum started. The haptic motor on his arm began to vibrate, not in a steady hum, but in a perfect, amplified thump, 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 thump. It was the rhythm of his own heart, turned into a physical, concussive force. He realized, about to knock on a god's door with a hammer. He closed his eyes. He let the shadow key on his other wrist lie dormant. He reached out with his mind, not listening to the lattice, but pushing against it, using the crude, rhythmic, human vibration as a battering ram. The lattice shattered around him. His senses ripped free of his body, and he was not in the room. He was in the spire. He was in the city. He felt the million minds of the populace, the whisper of the phantom choir's fear song, the cold, hard thoughts of Kaldor in the upper chambers. He pushed past it all, deeper, into the archival layer, the planet's memory. He thought of Oakhavens. He thought of Kaldor. He demanded the truth. The memory surged into him. It was a cascade of light and shadow. He saw the outpost, smoking in the rain. He saw the bodies. He saw the attackers, sweeping the compound. But the vision was wrong. The attackers were blurry, their forms indistinct, their faces smudged like watercolors left in the rain. He could not make out their armor, their ships. He saw Kaldor, standing on a ridge above the battle, just as he had suspected. But the High Regent was not alone. There was a second figure beside him, a human, in the distinctive, silver-plated environmental suit of Helios Crown. Adrian lunged, in his mind, toward that figure, trying to see the faceplates, to get a name. Anything. The image tore. It scrambled, dissolving into screaming, rainbow static, a firewall, a digital scar. The memory had been edited. Kaldor, or his Helios Crown allies, had not just covered their tracks. They had hacked the planet's collective unconscious. They had cut the truth from the tapestry, leaving only a hole and a lie. Adrian felt a surge of rage so profound it made his makeshift resonator whine. The vibration spiked, matching his racing heart. The memory stream buckled, and another image, buried beneath the scar, flashed into his mind. It was not Oakhaven. It was an Arclight data vault, a sterile, cold room. He saw a figure in a holding cell, a woman, humans. Her hair was dark. She turned. His breath hitched. He knew her face. It was his sister, Alani. She had been Oakhaven's chief engineer. She had been listed as killed in action. She was alive. She was a prisoner. The vision snapped. The resonator on his arm smoked, the motor seizing with a high-pitched scream. He was back in his room, on his knees, gasping. The smell of burning insulation filled his nostrils. She was alive. This was not just about revenge for the dead. It was now, God help him, a rescue mission. Before he could even process the shock. The chime rang. Archivist Nix entered, gliding past the guards as if they were mist. She took in the scene with one long, appraising glance. Adrian on the floor, the scorched, jury-rigged device on his arm, the lingering smell of ozone. "I see," she said, her voice dry. "You have been tinkering." "I was accessing," Adrian panted, getting to his feet. "He edited the archive. He's hiding his connection to Helios Crown." "That is a significant allegation," Nick said, though she seemed unsurprised. "And a futile one. The archives are sacred. Only she stopped. Only a resonance of an external nature could even detect such a thing. He would not have anticipated you?" "He's holding a prisoner," Adrian said, his voice raw. "A human. My sister." Nix's ancient face softened. "Just a fraction." "Then his crimes are deeper than we knew, which makes your purpose even more vital." She placed a small, light-emitting crystal on the table. "The captain gives you tools of movement. I will give you a map. She is incomplete." "The genetic rift," Adrian said. "The sovereign cord needs two." "Precisely. The Imperial line has a fracture, a genetic schism from 500 years ago. Her resonance is pure, but it is a solo. She has the authority, but not the power. She cannot command the deep lattice. Not alone." Nix's eyes bored into his. "The alignment is the one moment the bond is fluid. Kaldor knows this. He intends to use the Phantom Choir to mimic the partner frequency. He will sever her bond by force and offer the lattice a new, whole harmony, with him as the master. The lattice will accept it, to avoid the pain of a voided cord." "So we stop him," Adrian said. "You do not understand," Nix said. "He is already doing it. Listen." She gestured to the wall. The broadcast of Kaldor had ended, but the ambient hum of the city had changed. Clear harmonic chords were gone. In their place was a low, subsonic, thrumming pulse. It was the choir, whispering to the entire population. "Fear the outsider. Trust the strong hand. Purity is safety. Change is death." "He is poisoning the well," Nix said, her voice grim. "He is swaying the public mind, preparing them to accept his coup. By the time the alignment begins, the people will demand he take control." The weight of it all was crushing. A locked-away Empress. A public mind being slowly, subtly enslaved. A phantom army. And his sister, trapped somewhere in the dark. A chime from his console, the one that had been dead for days, made them both jump. It was not a message. It was not a broadcast. It was 3 words, in simple Terran standard text, appearing on the dark screen. "Phosphor Mirror Lake. Midnight." It was a trap. It was the most obvious trap in the history of obvious traps. "She is bold," Nix breathed, staring at the screen. "She's insane," Adrian countered. "Or it's not her, it's Kaldor, trying to lure me out." "The Mirror Lake," Nix mused. It is the one place on the spire where the lattice is thin. Its archival resonance is protected by water's mineral properties. It is a blind spot, a place for a private conversation. Or a private execution, Adrian said. He looked at the shadow key on his wrist. 10 minutes. He looked at Nyx. I'm going. I need a distraction. A big one. Something to pull the guards from this door and keep Kaldor's eyes looking the other way. A distraction, Nyx said, a rare, thin smile touching her lips. I am an archivist. My greatest weapons are inconvenient truths. I believe it is time for the Regency Council to review the unedited records of their own financial dealings with off-world corporations. That should keep them occupied. Midnight. The phosphor mirror. Lake was a sea of captured stars. The high terrace was open to the twin moons, and the vast, shallow pool was filled with microbes that mimicked the exact star map of the sky above. It was, as Nyx had said, a perfect blind spot. Adrian moved from the shadows, his 10-minute shadow key burning through its lifespan. His makeshift resonator was strapped to his arm, hidden under his jacket. She was there. Seraphine stood on a small, crystal island in the center of the lake. She was not in her imperial robes, but in a simple, dark blue shift. She was alone. The tension was so thick he could taste it. He was exposed. There could be 100 snipers in the darkness. He waded into the shallow, glowing water. "You're late," she said. Her voice was steady, but he could see her hands were trembling. "My apologies," Adrian said, stepping onto the island. "My social calendar has been rather full, mostly with assassination attempts and public smear campaigns." A flicker of a smile. "They are signs of his desperation." "He's moved you to ritual supervision," Adrian said, keeping his voice low. "He's activating the choir. He's winning. Your radiance." "Please," she said, her voice strained. "Hear just Seraphine. And yes, he is. Which is why I had to see you." She looked at him, her violet eyes searching his. "Nyx told you about the chord." "That you're a solo," he said, nodding. "And I'm missing harmony." "I felt it," she whispered. "In the throne room. When I saw you, the lattice didn't just respond, it sang. For the first time in my life, it was whole, and it terrified me." The vulnerability was staggering. This was not an empress. This was a woman cornered, holding a key to a lock she could not turn. "So what do we do?" Adrian asked. "I'm a diplomat with a homemade magic bracelet. You're a prisoner. He has the army, the government, and a psychic weapon." The sheer, crushing hopelessness of it hung between them. Adrian sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You know, this whole setup is absurd. The secret midnight meeting, the glowing magic lake, the evil regent, the imprisoned princess. It's like something out of a bad Terran holofilm." She blinked, confused. "A holofilm?" "An old story," he said, shaking his head. "We had one called The Last Star Night. Terribly cheesy. The hero meets the princess in the crystal cave. She's supposed to give him the ancient secrets of the blah blah blah. Instead, she mostly just complains about Senate subcommittees." Seraphine stared at him. "Cheesy. It's a term. It means predictable, lacking nutritional value." A look of profound, alien confusion crossed her face. "You call your stories cheese." "It's a food," he tried to explain. "A dairy product. It's never mind. It's a stupid metaphor." He looked at her, the Empress of Light, trying to understand why he was talking about coagulated milk in the middle of a coup. And then she laughed. It was not a polite, royal titter. It was a genuine, startled, breathy laugh. The sound was shocking in the silence of the lake. "You humans," she said, a real smile transforming her face. Your metaphors are metabolic, and here I thought you were just a weapon. You are also very strange. He could not help it. He smiled back. The tension did not disappear, but it changed. In that one shared ridiculous moment, the sovereign chord became more than a myth. It became a connection. They were not just a key and a lock. They were two people. The moment shattered, a low, deep, vibrating thrum, far below the frequency of a human voice, pulsed up from the floor, through the water. It was not the ambient, harmonious song of the lattice. It was the choir, Seraphine shouted, her hands flying to her temples. No, he's not waiting. He's activating it. Now. Adrian felt it slam into his resonance. The subsonic whisper was now a pervasive, mind-numbing chant. It was the sound of obedience. The sound of fear. Across the city, in the towers visible from the terrace, lights began to pulse in the same slow, sickening rhythm. The song of the trees went utterly silent, drowned out. He's broadcasting, Seraphine gasped, leaning on a crystal spire for support. He's not just preparing them. He's commanding them. He's poisoning the well. Adrian looked at the terror on her face, at the city skyline pulsing in hypnotic unison. His path was clear. His revenge, his sister, his duty. It all converged on this one point. He wants a key, Adrian said, his hand closing over the crude resonator on his arm. He's about to find out he left the door open for a monster. The city was wrong. For 2 days. The lattice's ambient song had been twisted. The gentle harmonic chords that Adrian had come to associate with the city's life were gone, replaced by a single, oppressive, subsonic frequency. It was a note that did not just exist in the air. It vibrated in the bone, in the teeth. It was the phantom choir's voice, a constant, pervasive whisper of obedience and fear. Adrian sat on the floor of his quarters, which had transitioned from a gilded cage to a death row cell. The ascension alignment was to begin in an hour. This was the endgame. Kaldor had placed Seraphine in ritual supervision, a polite term for locking her in the alignment chamber, isolating her from all allies. Today, he would use the choir to sever her bond and seize the lattice. Adrian's makeshift resonator was strapped to his forearm, hidden beneath his jacket. The shadow key Arya had given him was cold on his other wrist. He had 10 minutes of invisibility and a crude, heart-powered psychic hammer. It was not enough. The door chimed. Captain Arya Sol entered. She was not alone. She was flanked by 2 massive Imperial guards, their chitinous armor polished to a mirror shine, their faces hidden behind impassive dark visors. Arya's face was a mask of cold duty. Specialist Hale, you are being transferred. By order of the High Regent. You will be held in a subterranean containment cell to prevent your resonance from interfering with the sacred alignment. This was it, the final move. He was being taken off the board. A subterranean cell, Adrian said, his voice dry. Does it have a view? I am rather fond of the local singing botany. You will be silent, Arya snapped. She gestured to the 2 guards. Secure the prisoner. The guards moved forward, their movements heavy and deliberate. Wait, Arya commanded, holding up a single, gauntleted hand. The guard stopped. Arya stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she looked not at Adrian, but at the guard on the left. She tilted her head. Your glove, she said, her voice dripping with sudden, cold authority. The guard froze. Captain, your glove, she repeated, tapping his left gauntlet. The seal at the wrist joint. It is improper. Did you calibrate your suit's atmospheric seals this morning? Guardsman. Captain. Yes. Of course, the guard stammered, clearly thrown by the sudden, intense scrutiny. Then explain, Arya said. The microabrasion on the knuckle joint? Look at it. She brought her face close. By my metrics, that is a .003 deviation in the surface integrity. Do you have any idea what kind of contaminants could breach that seal? We are here to secure a biothreat, and you are walking in here with a compromised suit. She turned on the other guard. And did you inspect your partner's gear before entry? Captain, we were told to move with haste. Haste, Arya scoffed, is the mother of contamination. The High Regent's new alien contamination filtering protocols are absolute. You think this is a drill? You think this is a posting at some ceremonial garden? This is the Crown Spire. We are the Imperial Guard, not farmers. She slapped the wall panel, her datapad flaring to life. I am logging this. Both of you. Turn around. Face the wall. Present your seals for a full diagnostic scan. Now. The two guards, utterly cowed, turned and pressed their gauntlets to the wall as Arya began to aggressively scan them. Her voice, a low, furious lecture. I see a particle of dust. Dust unacceptable. This inspection will take at least 5 minutes. We will be here until I am satisfied that you are not dragging the city's filth into a secure area. She was turned away from Adrian, her back to him as she berated the guards. But as she did, her left hand, the one not holding the scanner, tapped a small, recessed maintenance panel on the wall behind her. A vertical seam of shadow, no wider than a man's shoulders, hissed open in the corner of the room. It was a root conduit, a dark, narrow tunnel leading straight down. Arya did not look back. She did not break cadence. This, she growled at the guards, is the worst display of basic equipment hygiene I have seen in 6 cycles. We are going to review the entire sanitation manual, line by line. Adrian did not hesitate. He activated the shadow key on his wrist. To the Spire's sensors, he simply ceased to exist. He slipped into the blackness of the root tunnel. The last thing he heard as the panel hissed shut was Arya Sol's voice, raised in fury. Now, let us discuss the proper application of joint sealant. He was in. The tunnel was steep, a vertical drop into the heart of the spire. He half slid, half climbed down the thick, pulsing lattice roots, guided by the one sound he could still feel, the deep, nauseating thump, thump, thump of the phantom choir. He was moving toward it. He emerged into the undervault. It was a cavernous, dark space, the true foundation of the palace. And in the center, the node he had seen before was no longer sleeping. The phantom choir was a throbbing, 20-meter mass of black, oily crystal. It pulsed with a sickening, deep red light, and the sound was coming from it, a wave of psychic pressure that made his vision swim. This was the coup engine. He had no time. He could hear the ceremony beginning, far above. He did not just hear it. He felt it through the lattice. He could feel Seraphine. She was in the main alignment chamber, a place of immense, ancient power. He could feel her terror, her isolation. She was bound to the ritual conduit, a throne of crystal that was, in reality, a harness. She was strapped in, a living sacrifice, her resonance exposed. He could feel Kaldor. The High Regent was on a dais above her, his arms outstretched, his voice booming across the chamber, amplified by the lattice itself. The body rejects the poison. Kaldor's voice was a wave of pure, charismatic power. The holy lattice, agitated by the alien taint, must be soothed. The imperial line is weakened, infected. But we are strong. We are pure today. We offer the lattice a new song, a whole song, a song of purity. The thump, thump, thump of the choir intensified, and Adrian felt the collective minds of the thousands in the chamber, the courtiers, the public, the guards, fall into a slack-jawed, hypnotic agreement. They were not just watching. They were participating. Their own weak, untrained resonance was being harnessed by the choir, amplifying Caldor's signal. He was making the entire city complicit in his takeover. Seraphine was fading. Her resonance, herself, was being drowned, overridden by the sheer, brutal volume of the choir's artificial harmony. Caldor was turning her into a hollow symbol, a puppet queen. Adrian stood before the pulsing black heart of the choir. He could not break it. He could not fight it. His makeshift resonator, his human device, was still strapped to his arm. "A solo," he whispered, his own heart hammering. "She's a solo, and she needs a harmony." He looked at the machine. It was built on his heartbeat. "You want a new song?" "Caldor," Adrian said, his voice raw in the darkness. "You want a whole harmony. You have no idea what you just invited to the party." He slammed his hand onto the resonator's activation stud. But this time, he did not just listen. He jammed his other hand, the one with the now burnt-out shadow key, directly onto the black, crystalline skin of the choir node. He closed his eyes. He opened his mind. He became the resonant apex. He did not just push his heartbeat into the lattice. He became the signal. His resonance, his human soul, his anger, his fear, and the frantic analog, electrical thump-thump-thump of his heart, all fused into a single, coherent signal. And he broadcasted. In the alignment chamber, the oppressive, droning bass line of the choir's song was suddenly, violently, ripped apart. A new sound entered the harmony. It was not a chord. It was a high-energy, screaming, chaotic arpeggio. It was the sound of a synthesized guitar solo played over a funeral dirge. It was wild. It was human. It was full of rage and hope and raw, unfiltered life. The light in the chamber, which had been a dull, pulsing red, shattered like glass. The hypnotized crowd cried out, their hands flying to their heads as the two sounds warred for dominance. The synth solo of Adrian's resonance slammed against the choir's bass line again and again. The air crackled. The chamber's pillars threw sparks. On her throne, Seraphine gasped. The pressure was gone. She was free. Her eyes flew open, and she saw Caldor's face. The High Regent's serene mask of control was gone, replaced by a look of pure, uncomprehending rage. "What is this?" Caldor roared. "Where is that signal coming from?" "It is the alien," one of his technicians shrieked from a console. "He is in the undervault. He is harmonizing. But it is wrong. It is chaotic." Countersong," Caldor snarled. "He cannot beat the choir. He is just one mind." Switch frequencies. Do not broadcast. Read him. Find his mind. Find his weakness. Break him with it. In the undervault, the battle changed. The choir's oppressive thrumming stopped. The node went silent. And then it attacked. It was not a sound. It was a focused, psychic beam that lanced directly into Adrian's mind. It bypassed his song and went for the singer. His vision vanished. He was no longer in the undervault. He was at Oakhaven. He was standing in the rain, the smell of ozone and burning plasma in his nostrils. He saw the bodies of the 17 colonists. He saw his friend, Marcus, his face frozen in a silent scream. The choir was showing him. It was amplifying his pain, his loss. They died because of Caldor. A voice whispered in his mind. It was the choir, using his own thoughts against him. He murdered them. He deserves death. "Yes," Adrian gasped. the pain fresh, the rage a white-hot fire. The choir pushed deeper. He took everything from you. The image changed. He was in the sterile Helios cell. He saw his sister, Alani. She was thin, her face bruised, her eyes dull with despair. She is suffering, every day. Because of him. He is a monster. He must be destroyed. Revenge. Adrian. You swore revenge. I did, Adrian whispered. His heart rate, the very core of his broadcast, began to spike. The arpeggio of his resonance became distorted, ugly, a screech of pure, unfiltered feedback. You have the power, the choir urged, its voice seductive. You can feel it. You are connected. You can kill him. You can kill them all, destroy the node, destroy the spire. Let your hatred burn it all down. It is justice. It is what you want. I want. The rage was overwhelming. It was a tidal wave, drowning him. He felt his resonance swell, coiling into a weapon. He could feel the crystal of the choir node groaning under the strain. He was seconds away from detonating it, from unleashing a psychic blast that would level the palace, killing Kaldor, the public, and Seraphine everyone. He was losing himself. Kill him. Kill Adrian. The voice was a whisper. It was not the choir. It was not his own thoughts. It was Seraphine. She was too weak to fight the choir's psychic assault. But she could speak to him. She had found his mind in the storm of his own hatred. He saw Oakhaven burning. He saw Alani's face. And then, superimposed over it all, a new memory. A sunlit diplomatic lunch, months ago. A table filled with stuffy, stone-faced Arclight nobles. He had been served a local delicacy, effervescent bubble tea, a synthetic drink he had privately told her tasted like sadness and industrial soap. And then, due to a pressure fault, his glass had harmlessly, spectacularly exploded, showering a famously grim-faced Lord Regent in bright blue, sticky foam. He saw the Regent's look of absolute shock. He saw Seraphine, across the table. Her hand clapped over her mouth, her shoulders shaking with suppressed laughter. He saw his own reflection on the table, his face, dripping with blue foam, and the slow, breaking grin he had been unable to hide. The tea, Seraphine's voice, whispered in his mind, cutting through the rage. It exploded. You looked so ridiculous. You laughed. The memory was so small, so human, so stupid. It was the antidote to the grand, operatic poison of his revenge. The rage did not vanish, but the obsession broke. The feedback in his resonance cleared. The screaming screech sharpened back into a clear, focused, powerful note. He opened his eyes, though he was still blind, still connected. You're right, Kaldor, he whispered, his voice resonating through the lattice itself. I am a chaotic signal. I am an alien, and you just gave me the keys. He changed his tactic. He stopped fighting the choir. He stopped the counter-song. He harmonized with it. He found the choir's core programming, the ancient, complex code. Preserve lattice integrity. Ensure unity. Obey sovereign. He did not attack the code. He questioned it. He used the one thing, the ancient, rigid, binary AI was not prepared for human logic. His resonance, now clear and sharp as a blade, sliced into the choir's mind. Query he sent, his thought voice echoing in the shared psychic space. You state your directive is to preserve lattice integrity. Affirmative. The choir's vast, cold mind replied. Query. The entity, Helios Crown, is an off-world corporation. They have inserted a memory patch, a digital scar, into the archival layer of the lattice. Is this not a breach of integrity? The choir's rhythm faltered. A microsecond of lag. Contradiction. The lattice is pure. Negative. Adrian pushed. Scan archival reference Oakhaven. Scan for edit signature Helios crown. You will find the scar. Your pure lattice is already corrupted. An external entity has breached integrity. There was a long, howling moment of silence as the ancient AI scanned its own memory banks, its core function, and found the lie, error, integrity compromised, source unknown. Source is Helios crown, Adrian supplied, his voice cold and hard. And they are allied with your current master, High Regent Caldor Thane. He permitted the breach. He is the source of the impurity. The choir's vast mind seemed to recoil. Error. The High Regent is the voice of purity. He commands and here, Adrian said, delivering the final blow, is the paradox. He pushed his final query. Your primary directive is preserve lattice integrity. Your secondary directive is obey sovereign, in this case, Caldor. But Caldor is the source of the integrity breach. To obey him, you must violate your primary directive. To obey your primary directive, you must defy him. Please resolve the contradiction. The effect was instantaneous. The phantom choir was binary. It could not compute the paradox. Obey. Preserve. Obey. Preserve. The two directives slammed into each other, creating a feedback loop of impossible logic. Error. Error. Logic fault. The deep, thrumming, oppressive bass line that had filled the city stopped. It did not fade. It died, as if a plug had been pulled. In the alignment chamber, the thousands of people gasped as one, as if waking from a deep sleep. They looked at their hands, at each other, their faces filled with confusion. The psychic compulsion was gone. They looked up at Caldor Thane. The High Regent's face was white. He stared at his console. Seeing the signal flatline, he saw the public, their eyes no longer adoring, but questioning. He saw Seraphine, her chin high, her eyes clear and filled with a cold, righteous fury. He had lost his plan, his army, his weapon, his public, all in one logical stroke. Caldor Thane looked at the console, his face twisting from shock to a black, venomous rage. He had lost the game, so he decided to flip the board. "If I cannot have it," he screamed, his voice no longer charismatic, but a raw, human shriek. "No one will—" He slammed his fist on a black, unmarked crystal stud on the command console. A fail-safe. A dead man's switch. "Activate lattice purge," he roared. "Override burn the node." In the undervault, Adrian's connection was severed. A new alarm blared, this one physical. A deafening shriek that shook the walls. The phantom choir, the great black crystal heart, began to glow. Not with red light, but with a blinding, terrifying white light. A self-destruct sequence. In the alignment chamber, the entire palace shuddered violently. A crack, like a bolt of black lightning, shot up the central crystal pillar, spiders webbing across the ceiling. The ascension alignment had failed. Catastrophically. Chaos erupted. The undervault was screaming. Caldor's failsafe was not a simple self-destruct. It was a catastrophic, uncontrolled overload. The phantom choir, the vast black crystal heart, was no longer pulsing with red light. It was blazing with a pure, blinding white-hot energy, a psychic sun threatening to go nova. The sound was a physical weight, a high-frequency shriek that vibrated Adrian's bones. The very foundations of the spire were groaning, the thick roots of the lattice around him beginning to crack and spark. He was in the blast radius of a psychic bomb. He could not fight it from here. The energy was too vast, too raw. He had to get to Seraphine. The dyad was the only thing that could contain this. He scrambled back into the root tunnel, pulling himself upward, his hands raw. The shadow key on his wrist, now just a useless piece of cold obsidian. His makeshift resonator was a scorched, smoking ruin on his other arm. He ripped it off and threw it into the dark. He was on his own now, running on raw resonance and adrenaline. The palace was in utter chaos. He burst from the maintenance panel into a corridor filled with panicked, screaming Arclight nobles. They saw his human face, his disheveled appearance, and shrieked louder. "The alien, the contamination!" "Out of my way!" he yelled, pushing through the stampede of silks and chitinous armor. The alignment chamber was just ahead. The great bronze doors were buckled, forced open by the pressure of the failing lattice. He threw himself through the opening. The scene was apocalyptic. The vast chamber was lit by the strobing, emergency light of the spire itself. The central pillar, the main conduit of the lattice, was fractured. A great black scar running its length. Dust and fragments of crystal rained from the high, vaulted ceiling. The crowd of thousands was a panicked mob, trampling each other to get to the exits. Kaldor Thane stood on the high dais, his arms spread wide, his face a mask of ecstatic, nihilistic triumph. He was a mad king, reigning over the destruction of his own kingdom. And below him, still strapped to the ritual conduit, was Seraphine. She was free from the choir's control, but pale, exhausted, and trapped. She was pulling at the crystal restraints, her eyes wide with terror as she watched the ceiling begin to crumble. Seraphine. He sprinted across the floor, vaulting over overturned pews. "Seize him!" a guardsman loyal to Kaldor bellowed, leveling his spiker rifle. "He is the source, kill the alien!" Two guardsmen broke from the crowd, intercepting him, their weapons raised. "No!" A black armored form slammed into the guards, moving with a speed Adrian could barely track. Captain Arya Sol was a blur of motion. She did not kill them. She disarmed and disabled them with a series of brutal, precise strikes, her sidearm never leaving its holster. She spun, her face grim. "He is with me. Imperial Guard form a perimeter, protect the Empress. That is the only order." Her voice, imbued with the authority of her office, cut through the panic. A handful of guardsmen, their loyalty to her greater than their fear or their confusion, broke off and formed a desperate, shrinking circle around the dais. Adrian scrambled up the steps. Kaldor merely watched him, a smirk on his face. "Too late, human. You broke the song, but you cannot stop the echo." Adrian ignored him. He ran to Seraphine, his hands moving to the crystal restraints. "No!" she gasped, her voice strained. "Don't touch me! The conduit! If you break the circuit, the backlash—" He stopped. She was right. She was the epicenter. To free her now might kill her. He looked at her, trapped. He looked at the chaos. He looked at the screaming. White energy that was beginning to pour up from the floor, from the cracks in the pillar. The choir's death scream was coming. He knew what he had to do. He walked to the center of the dais, the light platform, the spot meant for the other half of the cord. He stood opposite her. He closed his eyes. He did not have a machine. He did not have a plan. He only had his resonance. He reached out with his mind. Seraphine. Her eyes, wide with fear, snapped to him. She was exhausted. She was terrified. But she was a sovereign. She reached back. Adrian. Their minds touched. It was not a spark. It was a conflagration. If his first contact with the lattice had been a synthesized guitar solo, this was a full orchestral explosion. His chaotic, analog, human energy, all his rage, his fear, his desperate need for justice. His newfound shock about his sister slammed into her pure, crystalline, harmonic resonance. The chamber exploded with light. It was not blue. It was not gold. It was a third, New, impossible color. A brilliant, stable, diamond-white radiance that eclipsed the strobing alarms and the bleeding energy of the choir. The two auras, his and hers, flowed out, twisting, weaving, and merging into a single, breathtaking column of pure power. The sovereign dyad was formed, and in the instant it formed, the high-frequency, bone-jarring shriek of the overloading choir stopped. The ground stopped shaking. The crystal fragments stopped falling. The psychic overload, which had been seconds from detonating, was contained. The dyad had grabbed the runaway bomb with their combined minds, and held it. The screaming chaos in the chamber died. Thousands of people, frozen in panic, turned slowly. They stared, in absolute, terrified silence. The legend was real. The Empress was not alone. The human alien was her other half. Their two souls were visibly, undeniably intertwined. A pillar of divine, impossible light. Kaldor Thane's ecstatic smile vanished. His face contorted in disbelief. And then, in a final, brilliant surge of malice, he found his footing. He had lost the hardware. He would win the narrative. "Do you see?" he roared, his voice echoing in the sudden, vast silence. "It is exactly as I warned you. The contamination is complete." "He has done it!" He stabbed a finger at Adrian. A man now bathed in sovereign light. "He has not joined her. He has seized her. He has corrupted her light. He has hijacked the sacred bond. This is not a dyad. It is a possession." The crowd, which had been frozen in awe, now looked on in horror. The logic was terrifying. The human was alien. The light was different. Kaldor's voice swelled, a charismatic preacher of damnation. "You ask for proof. You ask why a human would do this. I will show you." He lunged for a secondary console, one that had not been destroyed. "I will show you the truth of Oakhaven. I will show you what these human animals did." The main chamber view screen, which had been dark, flickered to life. It showed the grainy, blurry footage of the massacre. The footage that Adrian had seen, the one with the edited attackers. "Look," Kaldor yelled. "Terran shock troops slaughtering innocents. This was their doing. A human atrocity designed to destabilize us." He superimposed the Terran diplomatic insignia over the blurry attackers. To the panicked, confused crowd, it looked like a perfect match. "He," Kaldor pointed at Adrian, "is the vanguard of their invasion, the spy sent to break our defenses from within, and now he has his hands on the lattice itself. He is here to finish the job." The crowd surged. The awe was gone, replaced by a dark, murderous rage. "Traitor! Kill the human! He has poisoned the Empress." The guards loyal to Arya Sol looked at each other, their resolve wavering. This was an accusation of divine treason. Seraphine turned her head, her light-dimmed form still bound to the conduit. Her voice was weak, carried on their new, shared resonance. "Adrian, they will tear you apart. They believe him?" Adrian looked at the sea of enraged faces. He looked at Kaldor, standing triumphant on his platform of lies. He felt the power of the dyad, a universe of energy, thrumming in his mind. He could crush Kaldor where he stood. He could incinerate him. He could force the entire crowd to their knees. Make them see. It would be so easy. The rage for Oakhaven, for Alani, for 17 dead colonists, surged in him. Kill him. He took a breath, and he made a choice. He let the power settle, turning it from a weapon into an amplifier. He dropped his mental shields, not to attack, but to speak. His voice, amplified by the dyad, was not a roar. It was a calm, clear, powerful statement that filled every corner of the chamber. "He is lying," the crowd quieted, shocked by the power of his voice. "Lying, A noble from Kaldor's faction bellowed. The evidence is before us. He is our High Regent. You are an alien. He is right, Adrian's voice boomed, startling them all. You do need proof. You deserve the truth. But you are not looking at it. He pointed a glowing hand at the view screen. You are looking at a lie. A file he personally corrupted. A digital scar he and his allies burned into your planet's memory to hide their own crimes. Blasphemy, Kaldor roared. The archives are sacred. Are they? Adrian countered. He turned, not to Kaldor, but to the thousands of watching citizens. I am a stranger here. I am an alien. I am, as he says, a contamination. But I am also a resident apex. And she, he nodded to Seraphine, is your true sovereign, and that, he pointed to the cracked, groaning pillar, is the lattice, your great archive. It does not lie. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Unless it is forced to, he turned, meeting Seraphine's gaze. Their minds were one. He did not need to ask. He saw her fear, her risk, her doubt, and her resolve. He made the offer, not just to her, but to the entire world. Kaldor Thane has shown you his version. Now let's show the truth. We will open the deep archive, unfiltered, unedited, right here, right now. Kaldor's face went white. You cannot. It is forbidden, it is. What is the matter, Regent? Adrian asked, his voice cutting. Are you afraid of what your own planet will say? He turned back to the crowd. This is a risk. It will show you things you are not meant to see. It will expose secrets, all of them, including mine. But you deserve to judge for yourselves. No more filters. No more ritual supervision. No more lies. This was the human solution. Not a war of power, but a demand for transparency. A reckless, terrifying, and absolute belief in the truth. Seraphine closed her eyes. She, too, had felt his memories. She knew what this would cost him. The Oakhaven wound. The vision of his sister. She opened her eyes and gave a single, firm nod. As the dyad, she projected, her voice joining his. We open the archive. We will see. Together. They raised their hands as one. The dyad's combined power bypassed Kaldor's console entirely. They plunged past the edited files, past the firewalls, and ripped the true memory from the archival core. The view screen flickered, the edited, blurry footage vanishing. It was replaced by a new image, Oakhaven. Crystal clear, high definition, the crowd gasped. The attackers were not Terran military. They were wearing sleek, silver-plated environmental suits. Mercenaries. And on their shoulders, a logo, a stylized, burning sun. Helios crown. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. This was not what they were told. The memory feed shifted, moving to the ridge above the battle. There was Kaldor, just as Adrian had seen in his vision, and beside him, the Helios Crown executive in his silver suit. And then, the audio, chilled, clear, and damning. Kaldor's voice, a necessary sacrifice. The outpost is yours. The alien tech is yours. The blame falls on the Terrans. My purest faction gets the political capital needed to cleanse the government. And you get the Lattice Energy contracts. The Helios executive's voice. A pleasure doing business, Regent. Oakhaven is secure. The chamber was utterly silent. It was not just treason. It was a false flag. He had murdered humans and sacrificed his own principles, all for a political power grab and energy rights. The purist faction, nobles in the crowd looked faint, their faces ashen. They had been his dupes. But the memory did not stop. For Adrian, the worst was yet to come. The feed shifted to the aftermath. Helios mercenaries, sweeping the engineering bay. They found a survivor, buried under a console. A woman. Alani. His sister. Adrian's breath hitched. His connection to the dyad wavered, the light flickering. On the screen, Alani was not a cowering victim. She came up fighting. She moved with a speed and precision that was not an engineer's. She disarmed one mercenary and broke the arm of a second before a third stunned her from behind. The Helios executive walked over, looking down at her. His voice was cold. "She's not on the manifest. Check her biosig." A moment later, a mercenary reported, "Sir, her internal modifications match the profile. She's Red Hand, an internal affairs operative." The executive stared. "She's a spy, investigating us. She's too valuable to kill. Take her to the black site, find out what she knows." The feed cut out. Adrian staggered. His mind was reeling. His entire quest for 5 years, the burning, righteous anger that had defined his life, was all built on a lie. She was not a martyred victim. She was a captured spy. She was playing a different game, a game he knew nothing about. His simple, pure hatred for Kaldor was suddenly a small, ugly, ignorant thing. He had been grieving a ghost, while she was fighting a war. The psychic blow was almost more than he could bear. In the chamber, the crowd was turning, a low, animal growl rising from thousands of throats. They were turning on Kaldor. "Murderer, traitor. He lied to the lattice." Kaldor Thane saw it. He saw the truth. He saw their faces. He was ruined. He was a man with nothing to lose. And he still had his hand on the purge. The dyad had contained the overload. They had not stopped the command. "You will all burn with me!" he shrieked, his voice a raw, animal sound of pure despair. He smashed his fist into the console, driving his hand through the crystal, triggering the final, absolute override. "Purge. Purge it all." The containment broke. The self-destruct that the dyad had been holding in stasis was unleashed. From the cracks in the floor, from the shattered central pillar, the death scream of the phantom choir erupted. It was not a sound. It was a column of raw, white-hot psychic plasma, a bomb of pure, negative energy, roaring up from the undervault. It headed straight for the cracked, fragile ceiling of the alignment chamber. If it hit, the entire upper spire would be vaporized. The crowd screamed, a single, unified sound of pure terror. Adrian and Seraphine did not hesitate. The revelation, the pain, the shock it had to wait. They turned from the crowd, facing each other, their hands still bound by the light of the dyad. They raised their arms as one. They did not create a shield. A shield would shatter. They created an anti-phase. They sang. Their combined resonance, the perfect harmony of the sovereign dyad, met the roaring column of white destruction. They did not block it. They caught it. A dome of impossible. Golden blue light formed above the crowd. The psychic blast slammed into it, but it did not explode. The dyad bent the energy. They absorbed the colossal killing shock, harmonized it, neutralized its chaotic frequency, and vented it. The lethal energy was transformed. It burst from the dome, not as a killing blow, but as a harmless, breathtakingly beautiful aurora of multicolored light that filled the high chamber. The deafening roar was replaced by a single, perfect, resonant chord. The light and the sound was the most beautiful thing any of them had ever witnessed, and it was the last they saw before Dyad's light went out. The feedback was catastrophic. The sheer volume of power they had channeled and transformed was too much. Adrian and Seraphine cried. Their connection shattered. The light vanished. They both collapsed to their knees, utterly spent, the silence of the chamber absolute. The purge was over. The city was saved. For a long, stunned moment, no one moved. Keldor Thane stood alone, his arm bleeding, his console sparking, his face a mask of hollow, empty disbelief. He had played his last card, and lost. A single footsteps echoed in the vast, silent room. Captain Aria Saul, her armor covered in dust, her face grim, walked onto the dais. She walked past Adrian, her eyes lingering on him for one unreadable second. She walked past Seraphine. She stopped directly in front of Keldor Thane. Her voice was cold, clear, and carried the weight of the entire planet. High Regent Keldor Thane, by order of the true sovereign of Arclight, Empress Seraphine Kale, you are under arrest for treason, conspiracy, and mass murder. Keldor looked at her, his eyes dead. He had nothing left. He did not resist. He slowly raised his hands. Arya holstered her weapon, produced a set of binders, and secured him. As she led him away, a small, hooded figure emerged from a side passage. Archivist Nyx. She was flanked by two of her acolytes. She ignored the crowd, ignored the prisoner. She walked directly to the smoking, cracked hole in the floor where the choir's energy had erupted. She knelt, placing her ancient hands over the rupture. "The mind is broken," she whispered, as if to the planet itself. "The song is over." Her acolytes produced a large, heavy, crystalline seal. They placed it over the hole, and Nyx began a low, humming chant. The violent energy ceased. The node was silent. "It is time," Nyx said, looking up, not at the crowd, but at Adrian and Seraphine. For a new song. Adrian was on his knees, his head pounding, his body aching. The shock of his sister's true fate was a cold stone in his gut, heavier than the exhaustion. Seraphine was near him, just as spent, her ritual bond smoking, finally inert. The crowd was silent, staring. The immediate threat was over. But as Adrian met the Empress's gaze across the dais, he knew the real conflict had only just begun. The chamber was full of questions. What was justice for Keldor? What was Helios' crown? And what, in the name of all the gods, was the hegemony to do with a human who held half of its sovereign soul? The silence that followed was heavier than the stones that had fallen from the ceiling. In the vast, ruined alignment chamber, 2,000 people stood in a state of collective shock, breathing air that was no longer poisoned by the choir's compulsion. The psychic pressure was gone, leaving a hollow, ringing emptiness. Adrian was on his knees, his entire body a symphony of pain. The act of channeling and neutralizing the choir's death blast had felt like holding onto a star. He was burned out, scoured from the inside, his resonance a dull, aching throb. Beside him, Seraphine was just as depleted. She had slumped forward, her form unbound from the ritual harness, her breathing shallow. She was just a woman in pale silks, her divine light extinguished, her authority resting on the fragile, human foundation of her own will. Arya Saul, her face a mask of grim duty, hauled the unresisting, catatonic Keldor Thane to his feet and marched him from the dais. The crowd parted, staring at the High Regent, not with the fury of moments before, but with a kind of numb, horrified pity. He was a broken thing. Archivist Nyx and her acolytes were already at work, their movements precise. They were not tending to the wounded. They were tending to the lattice. They laid crystalline seals over the smoking fissures in the floor, chanting in low, harmonic tones, applying psychic first aid to the planet's wounded mind. It was 2 days before the emergency session of the Regency Council was convened. Adrian had been moved from his prison quarters to a state apartment, though he felt no more free. He had slept for 20 hours, a deep, dreamless void. When he woke, the shock of Alani's true fate settled on him like a shroud. His sister was not a martyr. She was a captive. His entire 5-year quest for revenge had been a fool's errand. He had been chasing a ghost, blinded by his own simple, righteous grief, while she had been fighting a complex, secret war. The shame of his ignorance was a colder, sharper pain than the psychic exhaustion. He stood in the restoration chamber, a smaller, intact room, near the apex of the spire. Seraphine sat at the head of the great, crystalline table. She wore no crown, no elaborate silks. She was dressed in the simple, functional robes of a stateswoman. Her exhaustion was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp, and terrifying clarity. Archivist Nix sat at her right. Captain Ariasol stood behind her, a living shadow. The remaining members of the Regency Council, those not implicated in Keldor's treason, were arranged on the far side of the table. They were the purists, the old blood, the ones who had been duped by Keldor's ideology, and they were terrified. "He is a traitor," Lord Regent Vera said, his voice shaking. He was one of the men Adrian had seen on the choir's data log, a blind follower. "Keldor Thane is a monster. His entire faction of corruption must be cleansed." "Cleansed," Seraphine repeated, her voice soft. But it cut through the room. "That is the word he used. Is it not cleanse? Purify. He wanted to cleanse our world of alien influence. Now you wish to cleanse our world of his memory." "Your radiance," Lady Myrrell insisted. "The people are screaming for blood. They demand justice. We must show strength. A public execution. Today, we must purge the infection." "There will be no purge," Seraphine said, her voice rising, ringing with an authority she had never possessed before the alignment. "There will be no cleansing. There will be no blood. Not in my name." "But the law," Vera stammered. "Treason. The penalty is dissolution." "The penalty," she said, "will be determined by a fair and public trial. Keldor Thane will stand before the people. The unedited records of Oakhaven will be the prosecution's evidence. His allies at Helios Crown will be named. The public will hear all of it. His punishment will be justice, not vengeance." The council members looked at each other, aghast. A public trial, exposing their own inner workings, their deals, their compromises. It was unthinkable. "But your radiance," Myrrell argued, "to expose our statecraft and our vulnerabilities to the public." "The age of statecraft by secrecy is over." "Lady Myrrell," Seraphine said, her eyes like ice. "It was secrecy that allowed Keldor to build his weapon. It was secrecy that allowed him to ally with murderers. It was secrecy that almost destroyed this city. I will not rule a kingdom of shadows." She turned, her gaze falling on Adrian. He was the human, the alien, the contamination who had, in the end, saved them. He was also, by the undeniable evidence of the dyad, half of her soul, half of her sovereign power. He was the greatest political crisis and the greatest spiritual miracle in their history, all in one weary human package. "Specialist Hale," she said, her voice softening, becoming formal. "You have options. Your mission here is, by all definitions, complete. You are free to return to Terra. We will, of course, provide a military escort and our full diplomatic apology for your confinement." This was his choice. He could go. He could take what he knew, the evidence of the dyad, the truth of Helios Crown, the location of his sister, and go home. He thought of Alani. He thought of that cold, sterile cell in the memory. His first instinct was to demand a ship, to go himself, to burn Helios Crown to the ground. But he saw his reflection on the crystal table. He saw the face of the man who had almost detonated the spire, out of pure, blind rage. He saw the man who had been so easily manipulated by the choir. His hatred, a weapon turned against him. That man could not save Alani. That man was just a cleaner version of Kaldor. He looked at Seraphine, at the council, at the new, fragile world she was trying to build. "Revenge is a blunt instrument. Your radiance," Adrian said, his voice quiet, but it filled the room. "It breaks as much as it fixes. I came here looking for it. I found something more complicated." He walked to the head of the table. "Kaldor Thane is a symptom. Helios Crown is the disease. They are a Terran corporation. My people. My responsibility." He looked at the council members. "But they are also your problem. They infiltrated your government. They corrupted your memory. They murdered 17 humans and co-opted your High Regent. All for profit." He took a breath. The human solution. The HFY value. Locking into place. "I will not return to Terra. Not yet. And I will not pursue a crusade. I propose a new treaty. Not of trade. Of justice. I propose a joint interstellar commission. A combined Arclight and Terran task force. We will use your unedited archives. And we will use my authority as a Terran diplomat. We will pursue Helios Crown not with warships, but with interstellar law. We will seize their assets. We will expose their board. We will dismantle them. Piece by piece. Not for revenge, but for restitution." The council stared. This was unheard of. An alien, proposing to use their own sacred systems to prosecute a human corporation. "And as for me," Adrian continued, "I am, as you have all pointedly noted, an alien. I am not Arclight. I cannot be part of your government. But I am," he looked at Seraphine, "part of the dyad. The people saw it. You cannot put that light back in the box." He offered his solution. "So I will be what I have always been, an ambassador, a bridge. I will serve as the permanent attaché to this new commission, and I will be the guardian of the other side of the cord. I will stay, to ensure the dyad remains stable, and to ensure Helios Crown pays for what they did." Seraphine held his gaze, and in her eyes, he saw not just gratitude, but profound, world-altering relief. She was not alone. The council meeting lasted another 10 hours. By the end, the old order was broken. The Regency Council, with its pure-blood privilege, was formally dissolved. In its place, Seraphine, with Adrian's council, established the Council of Harmonic Wisdom. It would be a body of rotating members drawn, not from the nobility, but from the masters of the city's vital functions: engineering, medicine, agriculture, and archiving. And, in the most radical move of all, they enacted the Dyad Protocol, no major policy. No declaration of war or peace could be passed without being ratified by a public resonance poll, a direct, transparent vote through the lattice, open to every citizen. The government could no longer hide. Later, as the city slipped into the long, deep blue twilight, Adrian found his way to the archives. Nyx was there, overseeing the slow, meticulous process of repairing the archival core. "The purge," she said, not looking up, "was energetic. It did not just clear the choir's corruption. It unlocked everything. The old seals are broken." "All of them?" Adrian asked. "All of them. The history of the lattice. Its origins. The fracture in the imperial line. All of it." She turned, her ancient eyes sharp. "The people are demanding to know. They felt the dyad. Now they demand the history of the dyad. To keep it secret now would be a greater lie than Kaldor's." "So you're proposing it," Adrian said. "A full release. The great unsealing?" "Knowledge," Nyx said. is not a privilege of the archivist, specialist. It is the food of the public. They have been starved for too long. It is time for them to eat. She turned to a consul. Captain Saul is waiting for you. She has the information you requested. Arya Saul stood in a small alcove, out of her full battle armor, dressed in a simple, dark gray duty uniform. She looked less like a symbol and more like a person. She nodded to him, a gesture of crisp respect. On the screen between them was the data log from the alignment. Black Site Epsilon, Arya said, pointing to a set of coordinates. A Fucus sector. A hollowed-out asteroid. No official registry. Helios Crown's private prison. It is where they are holding your sister. Adrian stared at the coordinates. Every instinct screamed at him to go. I am taking a strike team, Arya said, her voice flat. Adrian looked up, stunned. This is a Terran corporate site. It is not your jurisdiction. She is a Red Hand operative, Arya corrected him. A soldier, left behind enemy lines. Her government has failed to retrieve her. That makes it my jurisdiction. The new council has approved my first mission to secure the asset, Alani Hale, and any other prisoners at that facility, and to bring back any evidence of Helios Crown's illegal operations. She met his gaze. My forces are faster. They are quieter. And they are not expected. I will bring her home. Specialist. Arya, he began, the word thick. Thank you. She just gave a sharp nod. The understanding passed between them. It was not friendship. It was a bond of shared purpose, forged in fire. We leave at dawn. That night, Seraphine sent a message to the assembled worlds. Standing on the high balcony of the spire, her voice amplified by the newly balanced lattice, she spoke. Hegemony arc light is not a weapon. Our lattice is not a tool of conquest. For generations, we have hidden, believing our power was a curse. We were wrong. It is a responsibility. Today, we declare ourselves a sanctuary, not a fortress. Our borders are open. Our knowledge is shared. And our power, she paused, belongs to symbiosis, to all who would join us in harmony. It was a declaration that would shatter interstellar politics for a century. When it was done, she stood alone on the balcony, the warm night air stirring her hair. Adrian found her there, leaning against the rail, looking down at the city. The city was different. The oppressive, rhythmic pulse of the choir was gone. The old, ambient hum was also absent. In its place was a vast, deep, resonant silence, a silence that was listening. She was gazing at a small, holographic projection in her hand, a complex, shimmering game of cards. Lattice Weaver, she said, as he approached. An old game of the court. Kaldor despised it. He said it relied too much on chaotic chance and illogical moves. I like it already, Adrian said, standing beside her. The gap between them was respectful, but no longer the vast gulf between an Empress and an alien. The rules are complex, she said, showing him the shifting, three-dimensional cards. The void stack counters all harmonic progressions, unless the Crimson Queen is played in the inverse phase. Adrian studied the board. That is a terrible rule. Seraphine actually smiled. A small, tired, genuine smile. It is fundamentally unbalanced, he said, tapping the projection. The void stack is clearly a win condition. That rule feels like it was written by someone who just kept losing and decided to invent a cheat. The smile became a quiet laugh. It was my great-great-grandmother, Empress Kalia. She was, by all accounts, A terrible player. She was also notoriously stubborn. So the rules are rigged, he said, a note of humor in his own voice. The rules are flawed, Sarafsan corrected, her voice soft. She looked away from the game, up at him. They are flawed and human. Or, well, you understand. We played by them for so long. We forgot we could write new ones. The banter faded, the light humor giving way to the profound, shared weight of what they had done. They were the dyad. They were, in a way, married by resonance, by a shared, traumatic purpose. It is not, she said, her voice barely a whisper, a burden I ever intended to share, Adrian, especially not with a cheesy barbarian who talks about dairy products at midnight. Hey, he said, feigning offense. Cheese is a complex and noble food. And besides, you were the one who laughed at the bubble tea incident. The Lord Regent's face, she said, was a shade of blue not found in nature. They stood in the comfortable silence, two people on a balcony, the fate of a world resting on their shoulders. For a moment, it felt possible. Seraphine's smile faded. She looked down at the city. They are so quiet. I do not know if they are healing or if they are afraid of us. As she spoke, a sound began. It was small, at first. From a park, near the base of the spire, a single voice, high and clear, singing a simple, three-note harmony. Then, from a transport node, a second voice joined, lower, rougher, then a third, 10, 100, across the city, from the high-perched apartments to the deep-root biofoundries. The people were singing. It was not the perfect, coerced unison of the phantom choir. It was a messy, chaotic, voluntary, and utterly beautiful wave of sound. They were not singing to the Empress. They were singing with the lattice. They were harmonizing, on their own, for the first time. The lattice responded. The city, which had been dark, began to glow, not with a uniform pulse of Caldor, but with a vast, glittering, multicolored tapestry of light. Each home, each building, each street, glowing with the unique, individual light of its occupants, all joining to form a single, dazzling whole. The city was singing its first, true, free song. Adrian and Seraphine stood side by side, listening. The revolution was over. The restructuring had begun. It took 7 days for the dust to settle. The city of Arclight, which had been a symphony of living crystals, was now scarred. The great central pillar of the spire was a fractured monolith, held together by the emergency psalms of Nyx's archivists and the desperate, jury-rigged engineering of the lower sector work crews. Caldor Thane was in a containment cell in the undervault. His resonance severed. His trial date set. The Regency Council was gone, dissolved by public proclamation. In its place, the new Council of Harmonic Wisdom, a chaotic, argumentative, and brilliant collection of engineers, doctors, and philosophers, was already trying to write a new constitution. The city, which had briefly sung in spontaneous harmony, was now quiet. It was the silence of a body in profound shock, a populace that had woken from a long, drugged sleep to find their entire reality rewritten. They had seen the dyad. They had seen the treason. They did not know what to believe. They were waiting. Adrian was in his quarters, the state apartment that was now his permanent residence. He was staring at a single data file, the coordinates of Black Site Epsilon. Captain Arya Saul had left 3 days ago. Her strike ship, the Silent Keel, disappearing from the Arclight system on a mission of rescue, or, as he was beginning to suspect, a mission of rendezvous. The rage was gone, the white-hot 5-year obsession that had defined his life. His grief for Oakhaven, his hunt for Caldor, it had all evaporated in the alignment chamber. It had been replaced by a vast, hollow, and deeply uncomfortable quiet. He had been a man with a singular, simple purpose. Now, he was what a key, a failsafe, a brother to a spy he had mistaken for a martyr. He was the most powerful human in the sector, and he had never felt more ignorant. Seraphine was just as lost. She was the Empress, but her government systems were broken. She was the sovereign, but she was only half of the equation. She, too, was waiting. On the 8th day, Archivist Nyx summoned them. She met them not in a grand hall, but in the deepest, oldest part of the archives, a circular chamber at the very root of the spire. The walls were not polished crystal. They were raw, uncut lattice, pulsing with a slow, ancient silver light. This was the heart chamber, where the planet's original seed had been planted. "The city is waiting," Nyx said, her voice a dry rustle. She was small, ancient, and seemed to draw strength from the raw energy of the room. "They are muted. The lattice is healed from the choir's purge, but it is scarred. Harmony is gone, replaced by static, by fear." "They are afraid of us," Seraphine said, her voice quiet. "They saw the power. They do not know if we are saviors or a new kind of tyrant. They are afraid because the song is incomplete," Nyx corrected. "You performed an act of war together. You saved them, but you have not spoken to them. The dyad was formed in a crisis. It must now be formed in peace. The lattice must be stabilized. You must connect again, not to fight, but to heal." Adrian looked at Seraphine. This was the one thing they had both avoided. The connection, the dyad, was intimate. It was terrifying. It had exposed his deepest, ugliest flaws. Seraphine met his gaze. Her face was pale, but resolute. She had made her choice. "We are ready, Archivist," Seraphine said. "Then stand," Nyx commanded, gesturing to two simple, unadorned circles on the chamber floor. "Opposite one another. Do not think of the city. Do not think of the council, or the trial. Think only of the sound. Find the harmony you made, the one that saved you." They stood, facing each other. The vast, silent chamber seemed to hold its breath. Adrian closed his eyes. He reached out, not with the chaotic, heart-driven hammer of his makeshift resonator, but with the quiet, controlled, trained resonance he had spent his life suppressing. Seraphine did the same. Her pure, crystalline note, the solo of her bloodline, reached for him. Their minds touched. There was no explosion, no shattering of glass. This time, it was like sunlight breaking on a calm sea. The diamond-white light that had been born in chaos returned, but this time it was stable, warm, and impossibly, profoundly peaceful. It filled the chamber, the two of them at its core, a single, perfect, stable column of shared consciousness. The static in the lattice vanished. A single, pure, harmonic chord resonated from the heart chamber, flowing up the roots, through the spire, and out into the entire city. In the streets, the people who had been huddled in silence looked up. The fear broke. The sound was not a command. It was reassurance. It was peace. But for Adrian and Seraphine, it was only the beginning. As their minds fully, peacefully, merged, the light around them changed. The silver walls of the heart chamber seemed to dissolve. "The wound is healed," Nyx's voice whispered, seeming to come from a great distance. "And the old seals, the seals that predate the monarchy, they are opening. The lattice is showing you itself. It is showing you the truth." The vision took them. They were not in the spire. They were in the deep, cold black of interstellar space. Before them hung a fleet of ships. They were not sleek Arclight vessels, nor were they Terran cruisers. They were primitive, vast, cylindrical, slow-moving generation ships pitted by millennia of travel. They watched as one of these great, lumbering arcs entered a young, terraformed solar system. They saw figures in bulky, primitive environmental suits, descending to the surface of a green, fertile world, the world that would become Arclight. And they watched those numbers plant something, a single, glowing, crystalline seed. It was the seed of the lattice. "They are human," Seraphine breathed, her thought voice echoing in Adrian's mind. "They are..." Adrian was stunned. "They are us!" The vision accelerated. They saw the humans settle the world. They saw the lattice grow, intertwining with the settlers, changing them, adapting them. They saw the centuries pass, the skin, the eyes, the very biology of the settlers shifting, becoming symbiotic with the living crystal. They were no longer just human. They were Arclight, Seraphine's ancestors. "You are the gardeners," Adrian realized, his mind reeling. "The ones who stayed..." The vision shifted again. Back to the great, primitive fleet in orbit. Most of the ships were leaving. They had planted the seed, and were moving on. But one ship stayed, a command vessel. A new memory bloomed. A council of these ancient humans. The Seed Commanders. "The lattice is a gift," one of them said, her voice echoing across time. "But it is a symbiosis. It must never be a tyranny. It must never be controlled by a single mind. We will build the genetic key, the sovereign chord. It will require two minds, two frequencies, to unlock its true power. The Gardener line. Who will stay and nurture the lattice? And the Initiator line. Who will carry the code back into the void?" They saw a second genetic protocol being encoded. A fail-safe. The Initiator line. The Resonance Initiators. Adrian's bloodline. "They planned this," Adrian whispered. "This is not an accident. It is a reunification protocol," Seraphine realized, the implication settling on her like a crown. "The lattice was never meant to be ruled by me. It was meant to be co-sovereign. It was designed to wait for the two halves of humanity to find each other again. It was a fail-safe against Kaldor, against me, if I had chosen to rule alone." "I was not an invader," Adrian said, the shock of it hitting him. "I was not a contamination." "You were an invitation," Seraphine's mind whispered. "You were the other half of the key, sent by history. The lattice knew you the moment you arrived. It has called to me. It called for you." The final piece of the puzzle slotted into place. The dyad was not a miracle. It was an engineering solution, a 1,000-year-old plan to ensure that the lattice could only be fully awakened by two free minds, from two separate cultures, choosing to work together. It was the ultimate defense against tyranny. The grand cosmic revelation faded, the diamond light softening. They were still connected, their minds a perfect, calm sea. And into that sea, a new signal came. It was not from the lattice. It was small, tight beam, heavily encrypted, and purely human. It was a red hand signal. Adrian's breath caught. He focused on it. The signal was coming from Ariasol's ship, the Silent Keel, now deep in the Ophiuchus sector. It was a relay. The message itself was live. Phase 1 complete. Rendezvous at Point Karen successful. The asset Alani Hale is formidable and has her own agenda. It was Arya's voice, her tone strained, almost amused. And then a new voice. A voice he had not heard in 5 years, except in his nightmares. It was crisp, impatient, and breathtakingly alive. "Arya, stop reporting and fly. The Oakhaven sacrifice was a success. We have the core data from the Black Site. Kaldor was just a provincial governor with an ego. The real target is the entire Helios Crown Board of Directors. They are meeting in 3 days on Cygnus Alpha. We are going to crash their party. There was a pause. And Adrian, his heart stopped. I am glad you finally decided to join the fight. I was wondering how long you were going to play the grieving brother role. It was frankly a little one-note. Alani out. The signal cut. Adrian stood in the heart chamber, the dyad's light pulsing around him. His mind was utterly, completely blank. His sister, alive, the massacre, a sacrifice, a staged insertion. His 5 years of burning, righteous, soul-defining vengeance was a little one note. He was not the Avenger. He was not even the hero. He was the little brother who had just been informed that he had finally caught up. The psychic shock, the sheer, crushing absurdity of the revelation was so profound that he did not feel anger. He did not feel grief. He felt light. The terrible, crushing weight of his past. The burden of the 17 dead at Oakhaven. The need for Keldor's blood, it all just lifted. It was not his burden to carry. It was not a tragedy. It was a move. A brutal, cold, and brilliant move in a war he had not even known existed. Seraphine felt his shock, his confusion, and then, this sudden, bizarre lightness. She disconnected, gently. The diamond light faded. They were standing in the heart chamber, just 2 people, breathing the cool, ancient air. Nyx was watching them, her ancient face knowing. Adrian was silent for a full minute. Then, he spoke. She let me think she was dead, he said, his voice a strange mix of awe and exasperation. For 5 years. She let me tear my life apart. Hunt a man across the galaxy all so I could stay out of her way. He ran a hand through his hair. She's an absolute maniac. She's just like our mother. Seraphine had felt the entire transmission. She did not know what to say. She is deeply committed to her mission. She is, Adrian said. And then he started to laugh. It was not a happy laugh. It was a startled, broken, and profoundly relieved sound. And I was a fool. I was a child with a ghost story. I almost burned this world down for a ghost story. He looked at Seraphine. His eyes, clearer than she had ever seen them. The old, burning rage was gone. This is what we do, isn't it, humans? His voice was quiet. We get it so wrong. We are so blind. We build empires of grief over misunderstandings. We are driven by ego, pain, and metaphors about cheese. Seraphine's lips twitched. And we laugh at exploding tea. And we laugh at exploding tea, he agreed, his own smile finally breaking through. And then we find the truth. And we have to correct. We have to look at the entire, shattered mess we made and choose to fix it, not with rage, but with rules, with law. He had made his choice. He turned to Nyx. The Commission. The Interstellar Justice Commission. It needs to be formalized. Today, Alani and Arya can handle the fireworks. They are the red hand. But we have to be the open hand. We have to be the ones who build the charter, the ones who write the new law. He looked at Seraphine. The prosecution of Helios Crown. It cannot be a military action. It must be a legal one. You do. That is the only way this harmony actually means anything. We have to be better than them. We have to be better than me. That evening, they stood on the grand balcony, the same one where they had shared their cheese metaphor. The city was blazing with light, a vast, complex, multicolored tapestry, and it was singing. The hesitant, individual voices had joined. not in the forced unison of the choir, but in a vast, complex, voluntary harmony. The new Council of Harmonic Wisdom had ratified the first draft of the Charter. Kaldor's trial was set, and the great unsealing Nyx's full, transparent release of the planet's true history was underway. "She is truly your sister," Seraphine said softly, looking out at the city. "Willing to sacrifice herself, and you, for the mission." "She is a pain in my posterior," Adrian replied, his voice calm. "But yes, she is. And she is magnificent. I hope Arya keeps her from actually blowing up the Cygnus Alpha station. She can be enthusiastic." Seraphine smiled. "You could have gone. You could have joined her, taken your half of the Dyad's power, and pursued your fireworks. And become what a warlord, another human imposing his superior will on the galaxy." Adrian shook his head. "I am done with that. I am done being the man who thinks he has all the answers. I am the man who is just finding the questions, and I would rather find them with you." He turned to her. The air between them was no longer charged with crisis, but with a quiet, profound potential. "Seraphine," he said, his voice dropping the last of its diplomatic armor. "I am not a key. I am not a failsafe. I am just a man, a very confused man who just found out his entire life was a subplot. But I am here, and I choose to be." She looked at him, her violet eyes deep, no longer the lonely Empress. "When I was just Seraphine, I was a prisoner of the crown. When I became the Dyad, I was afraid I was a prisoner of destiny. Of you." She stepped closer, the formal distance between them, finally, irrevocably gone. "But you had all the power of the lattice. You had the rage of a lifetime. You had the perfect justification for vengeance, and you chose law. You chose to build." She did not reach for him. She did not need to. "I am offering you the full trust of my crown, Adrian, and of myself, not because history demands it, not because the lattice bonds us, but because I choose to. Because I respect, profoundly, the man who can laugh at himself, and who can choose justice over his own heart." "It is a choice I will have to make every single day," Adrian said, his voice raw. "But I accept." The moment held, a quiet promise under the singing stars. Later, in his new office, Adrian activated his diplomatic console. The link to Terra was, for the first time in months, open, stable, and secure. He began his final report. "Terran Diplomatic Corps. Specialist Adrian Hale reporting. This is my final transmission regarding the original treaty negotiations. My mission has been complicated. The Oakhaven incident has been resolved. The perpetrators, Helios Crown, and elements of the Arclight Regency have been identified. Legal proceedings are underway." He paused, looking out the window at the blazing, harmonious city. "Due to unforeseen historical and biological imperatives, my assignment has been permanently altered. I am accepting a new post as co-chair of the Joint Terran Arclight Commission on Interstellar Justice. Tell my superiors I am extending my mission. Indefinitely." He smiled. "Just a little. At the request of history." He ended the recording. The door opened, and Seraphine stood there, a small, knowing smile on her face. "At the request of history?" she asked, her voice laced with the dry humor he had come to adore. "Is that not just a little bit dramatic?" Adrian shrugged, leaning back in his chair, grinning. "I thought it had a certain flair. It sounded better than 'my sister is a Black Ops maniac who staged a war and I missed it,' or 'I am now psychically entangled with the Empress of a living planet.' They tend to prefer concise reports." She laughed, a free, clear sound that seemed to harmonize with the city itself. "Come," she said, offering her hand, not as a monarch, but as a partner. "The Council of Harmonic Wisdom is waiting, and the city they are singing our song." He stood. He took her hand. They walked out onto the grand balcony together, and the combined song of 1,000-year-old history, of two lost halves of humanity, reunited at last, rose to meet the stars.